Welcome to Disciplined Disciple. This is the first ever podcast that Petra Publications has released, and I'm very excited about it. I've been working on it for months now, and I just wanted to do this quick introduction to the podcast to explain what it is and what we'll be doing with it, and also to introduce this particular first episode. So first, what is Disciplined Disciple? Well, we are going to be doing an interview series. This is just a sit-down kind of podcast. I'll be doing some of them online, but I'll be interviewing Reformed Christians. And the idea behind Disciplined Disciple is that those disciples that I'll be interviewing have devoted their life, they're disciplined, and they are seeking sanctification and seeking to be conformed to the image of Christ. So I will be asking them questions geared in that direction. Some of these people you might know. I'm very excited, but I will keep secret some of the people who will be coming on the channel. Very excited about that. So that's what Disciplined Disciple is. Now, this first episode, to kind of segue into interviews, I sat down with Romilly Young, who writes papers on our journal page on the website, and we discussed the fantastic book, A Severe Mercy, A Story of Faith, Tragedy, and Triumph by Sheldon Vonnegut. This is very similar to my normal book reviews, but kind of a discussion-based review. But as the Washington Post says, no brief review can do justice to the human depth of this book. And that's very true. And so we are not attempting to dive into the depth of this book. We're not trying to explain all of these things. But we did want to bring awareness to the book, and we thought that a great way to do that would be to review it. And so that's what we're doing today. And that is all I have to say. So enjoy this episode of Disciplined Disciple. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Disciplined Disciple. And today we're joined by Romilly Young, and we'll be looking at and having a conversation about A Severe Mercy, A Story of Faith, Tragedy, and Triumph by Sheldon Vonnegut. And for those who don't know you, Romilly, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Romilly. I publish papers for Petra Publications on our website under the name R.A. Young. I'm studying English, and I first encountered this book, A Severe Mercy, about 10 years ago, I'm not sure. I fell in love with it. I have recommended it to every person I've spoken to since then, more or less.
Including me.
Including you.
She got me this book for, Christmas?
Christmas.
And I keep saying my birthday. I don't know why I'm saying that. But anyway.
It wasn't true.
It's not true. It's a lie. Don't listen to me. But for Christmas, she got me this book, and it took me a while to get around to it because I have, a big list of books to read. But I finally did, and I wished I had read it earlier than I did. It's truly a life-changing read. And as I'm sure I mentioned in the video preceding this, no brief review can do justice to the human depth of this book. So what we're doing here is sort of in vain. We're not going to scratch the surface of the depth of this book, but we're going to attempt to. And if you're new to Petra Publications and at large, my name is Davis, and on the channel I mostly just review Reformed Christian books. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I'd love to have you join us by subscribing down below. And if you've been following for a while, links to our donation page, or you can donate either one time or sign up for a monthly subscription. That's also available there. And if you're interested,
you can buy a hat like
we
his.
also have merch. We have hats, we have notebooks, we've got mugs that I'll be drinking from today. It's a very large mug. But all that available on our website if you're interested. Links down to those in the description down below. I guess we'll go ahead and dive into this book review. The way this will be structured is very similar to my normal book reviews, only we're going to be talking and discussing various parts of it as we go. But for historical context, I'll just go ahead and say that Sheldon Vonnegut was born on August 4th of 1914, and he died on October 18th of 1996. So fairly recently, but one of the main things that we should know before picking up this book, and this is something that we discussed before I picked it up, is just that he was friends with C.S. Lewis. That's the big connection. That's where most of this book is located is around C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have anything to say?
When I introduce this book to people, I always feel the need to downplay it, which is really not fair because it's my favorite book. It's amazing. But you can probably testify. When I told you to read it, I said some weird things about it.
Yeah. She was very much like, this is a strange book. It's weird. I just don't want you to read it and think it's odd. Which I didn't. The first 20 pages are a little bit confusing. They're hard to get through. I guess it'd be the first 23 pages is the first chapter. It's a little bit odd. Like, you don't know what's going on. It kind of brings you through this strange... It's almost like a movie scene. It's like a script for a movie describing the scene. But once you get past those first 23 pages, everything makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, the way she describes it at first, when she introduces it, this is such a weird book. It's strange, but it's my favorite one, and you should read it. Might be true.
I think I was right.
But I don't know if I would describe it that way. So this is a very lovely book that made me long for more, and it made me appreciate life. It's one of those books that really displays the beauty of creation and even the beauty of the English language. You're sitting on the edge of your seat for every sentence. Mm-hmm. And even the scenery that it describes is so beautiful at times that, it just makes you long for life itself. It makes you want to go out and do things and explore the world.
It's very evocative. Like, there's one scene where they've been in the library, right, for months, more or less, just living in there. And then he remembers, there's stars and trees with no leaves outside. And it's this idea of going out and reclaiming what's there beyond your inner mind.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Is that when they're...
in Yale.
In Yale, yeah. Yep, good stuff. It's a kind of book also that makes you hate to finish it. You get to a certain point, maybe 1/3 of the way through, and you're like, if I finish the book, I can never read it for the first time again. Mm-hmm. And you get to the place where you just don't want to finish it. You want to read it, but you never want it to end. Mm-hmm. And that hardly ever happens to me. Typically, I'll pick up a book. It'll be an okay book, but I'm ready to get to the end of it so I can start the next book and then start the next book and start the next book. This was I just want to read this book specifically for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's how I ended up reading it 3 times in one semester.
Nice. There's just something special about this book that is unlike any other book. And one of the things about it, too, is that there's so much emotion involved in the book. There's, it's funny, it's sad, it's happy, there's longing in it, there's, it's motivating, and there's so many more things that you could say about it. And even, as I read it, I found myself laughing and crying and even at times yelling at the book, trying to make things happen differently for some reason, that would change anything. But it's a truly beautiful book. And even, as he says on page 18, what is beauty but something that is responded to with emotion? And I think that sort of proves that this book is a beautiful book. Mm-hmm. Its contents are beautiful. And so what were some of the emotions that you felt reading it? And where about in the book are those emotions found?
Yeah, when I read it the first time, at least, I really enjoyed the hospitality. Their lifestyle is really amazing. They just open their home and keep it that way. Yeah. There's this poem somewhere near the beginning that is at a bar that they go to. It says, "Fires, friends, and books decree, wisdom, love, and courtesy," which basically just sums up the way that they live. Yeah. They have their books, they have their wisdom, they have their companionship. Yep. Which, it's really inspiring.
Well, one of the most inspiring things to me was the parts where they buy or they rent their flat. Yeah. And they're at Yale, right? Oxford. Where are they?
Yeah, Oxford.
Oxford.
At that point.
They're at Oxford, and they have this flat, and they're bringing people over all the time. Like, I think he describes it as there were people in and out of the house at all times.
Mm-hmm.
There was always someone there, and they were having these deep discussions about philosophy and theology, right. And they were enjoying drinks together and smoking together, and the things that we probably wouldn't do today because we know that it's bad for the health.
Well, they did too.
They did too, but they didn't care. But anyway, things that would be a lot of fun for people today if they only had a chance to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And even like the idea of having people over all the time. Like the door was always unlocked. They just welcomed people in.
Yeah.
And that's really an amazing thing.
And it was really those relationships that led to them becoming Christians.
Right.
Like they were what they called pagans at
Mm-hmm.
that point. They worshipped this idea of like a high standard of beauty.
Yeah.
But then their Christian friends and just exposure and deep conversations throughout their time at Oxford, and especially his relationship with C.S. Lewis, they did lead to their conversion, which was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they were the first, I guess, 2 or 3 chapters, right? Something like that, are about their paganism and about how they worshipped the god of beauty. They desired to have things beautiful as possible. And of course, at Petra Publications, we desire that too. We part of our mantra is strive for beauty. But that can't be the God that you're worshiping.
Right.
And so they really went on an interesting path as they went from worshiping beauty to attending Anglican church services because of the beauty of the liturgy,
mm-hmm.
right? And so they're like worshiping and praying from the prayer book before they were even Christians, mm-hmm. which is a really fascinating thing. They found that to be
They take communion
beautiful.
Just because they
It's
think
beautiful.
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really an amazing thing. And then eventually they come to the place where it's like, oh, wait a minute. No, I think this is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just beautiful, and it is beautiful, but it's also true. Were there any other spots in here that specifically made you feel things?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, so there's just so much to take in with this book. One of the main things that stuck out to me as I was reading this was his ability to use the English language to describe exactly what he was thinking in his head. And so as the reader, you become part of his thought process. You become like conscious with him. And so you're discovering things as he's discovering them, and you're thinking about things as he's thinking about them. And this will spoil some of the book here, so if you're not interested in a spoiler, either skip ahead or just stop watching, because we might spoil a few more other things. But as Davy dies...
I don't think the watcher knows who Davy is.
Oh, well, Davy is his wife, and she dies. And to put it diplomatically.
Painful. It's very painful.
So she's dying. And we go from this moment, there's time in the book for between when they find out she's going to die and when she actually dies. And as you go through this process, Van sort of has to go through this grieving process, right? Mm-hmm. And you go with him, but it's also very, very quick. 1 minute she's totally fine, and then the next minute she's dead. And I think that really shows how Van was feeling at the time. Things just sort of rushed in and happened without even a moment to think about that.
His poetry throughout the book also offers you a lot of insight into how he views things. Like, he has beautiful poems that he writes after his wife dies, but none while she's dying. He has poems about his conversion throughout, which are really, really cool. There's one called The Gap that's like, you have a leap of faith in either direction at some point. That it's a leap of faith to decide that, Jesus is the Lord and Christianity is true. But it's also a leap of faith to go back to this pagan religion that they had. Did Jesus live? And did he really say the burning words that banished mortal fear? And are they true? Justice is central here. The church must stand or fall. It's Christ we weigh. All else is off the point. The flood, the day of Eden, or the virgin birth have done. The question is, did God send us the Son incarnate, crying, love? Love is the way. Between the probable and proved there yawns a gap. Afraid to jump, we stand absurd, then see behind us sink the ground, and worse, our very standpoint crumbling. Desperate dawns our only hope, to leap into the word that utters up the shuttered universe.
Nice. That's on page 100, by the way. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I just think it's really a cool idea and something you would never think of. That in conversion, there's a leap of faith in either direction. If they had decided to return to their pagan worship of beauty, that would have been disregarding what they did know to be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. There are a couple of things just about the book itself that would be important to talk about as well. Some of the things like the inclusion of 18 letters from C.S. Lewis. Some of these really are quite insightful, and you're not going to find stuff on like what he's saying in these letters in some of his books. For instance, there is a whole letter here where C.S. Lewis discusses homosexuality, and that's not something that I don't think he ever wrote anything on homosexuality. But you have a letter here where he talks about it. This is on page 147. He says, "I don't think little concessions like wearing the clothes of the other sex in private is the right line either. It is the duties, the burdens, the characteristics, virtues of the other sex, I expect, which the patient must try to cultivate." That was not the quote I thought it was, but that was on cross-dressing also, which he doesn't talk about either. But yeah, this whole letter here on page 147 is about homosexuality and I guess cross-dressing. This. First, to map out the boundaries within which all discussion must go on, I take it for certain that the physical satisfaction of homosexual desires is sin. So that's really good. And another thing that we can talk about in this book, and we've already mentioned some of this already, and that would be the inclusion of a lot of poems throughout the book. Yeah. And so you have these poems sprinkled throughout the text here, which really just showcase his mastery of the English language. Yeah. His ability to shape things, like pictures even, into words. I remember didn't he send one to Lewis?
He sends at least two to Lewis, yeah.
And Lewis really liked his poems. Mm-hmm. And even, how did he respond to that one where he said, this was really good?
I don't remember.
There was something that he said.
There's definitely one where he says, unfortunately, no one will like this poem, but it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that one. So that's one thing. And then another thing would just be how much history of that time he was able to capture in a very small amount of time, or space in a book. Yeah. You learn so much about Lewis and their relationship. You learn a lot about like cultural things that were going on. Yeah. You learn about the way they were living, and all of that. Lots of fun things, and so that's a really cool thing. Mm-hmm. But I guess now we can just dive into some quotes here, and I think you have quotes too.
A few, yes. I think I already talked about both of them.
Did you? Oh, you only have two? Okay.
Well, I have more than two, but they're not really.
Well, you can just read the quote if you want. That's what I always do. But the first quote is from page 29, where he talks about love. And he just says, one who has never been in love might mistake either infatuation or a mixture of affection and sexual attraction for being in love. But when the real thing happens, there is no doubt. A man in the jungle at night, as someone said, may suppose a hyena's growl to be a lion's. But when he hears a lion's growl, he knows damn well it's a lion. So with genuine loveness, so with Davy and me, a sudden glory. I really like that. And then on page 30, this is the quote that Romilly was talking about earlier.
Strength. I was close.
Fire's friends and books decree, wisdom, strength, and courtesy. It's just really great. And that ended up being on their mantelpiece over their fire. So.
As it should be.
As it should be. Do you want to read one?
Yes. If you have read any of my papers, this is probably my most quoted book. I would say second to the Bible, but I'm not sure it is. So I know some quotes that really stand out to me are what he says about time. He and Davy, they search for moments where there isn't time. So this is what he says. In a golden summer when our love was young, Davy and I had sat on a stone wall near Glenmurrell and talked about unpressured time. Time to sit on stone walls, time to see beauty, time to stare as long as sheep and cows. At my father's club, sitting before the fire, we had spoken of moments made eternity, meaning what are called timeless moments, moments precisely without the pressure of time, moments that might be called, indeed, time-full moments, or time-free moments. So they talk about how it's the pressure of endings that make time painful, which is really poignant in this book, where the whole thing leads toward the ending.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's good. And there's another quote on page 43. Going back to what I was talking about on love. He says, those who see love as only sex, or mainly sex, do not quite simply know what love is. I think I was going to read that one when I was by myself, but...
Yeah, that's okay.
But, anyway. A good quote to be read. And a good point. Do you have another one? Or is that the only one?
I lost my page again.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I'll read another one. Love must... what does he say here? At the bottom here, he says, but we were more in love. For love must grow or die. I think that's really good, too. And then on page 86 and 87, let's see here. This is quoting himself. He says, it is not possible to be incidentally Christian. The fact of Christianity must be overwhelmingly first or nothing. And this is while he's a pagan, by the way. This suggests a reason for the dislike of Christians by nominal or non-Christians. Their lives contain no overwhelming firsts, but many balances. And so he's saying the only people who have a first at all in their lives are Christians. And in order to be a Christian, you have to have Christ as your first.
That reminds me of another quote that he has from his pagan days about Christianity, which is, the best argument for Christianity is Christians, their joy, their certainty, their completeness. But the strongest argument against Christianity is also Christians, when they are somber and joyless, when they are self-righteous and smug in complacent consecration, when they are narrow and repressive. Then Christianity dies 1,000 deaths.
Wow.
I think it's amazing how much he knew about Christian living from
Before
the outside.
Wow. And that also serves as a reason for us as Christians to live consistent and righteous lives, because we are affecting the pagans of our world and our society just by the way we live.
Which also just brings us right back to, this is a very inspiring book.
It is. It is quite inspiring.
You read it, you want to live differently.
Yes. Yep. That's good. Do you have anything else, or should I read another one?
You can read another one.
All right, so this comes from page 120. We've talked about this already. This is the people just being at their home. This is kind of a long quote, but it's worth the read. If I can read. I'm having trouble reading today. So he says, people were always welcome, except once. We had got up late and were consequently grumpy. The place was a ruin of dirty cups and glasses and books spread out on the floor. Also, note how as I read this, you just start imagining what he's writing about. It's so vivid. He says, gray light fell upon the room from the skylight. The fire, of course, was cold and dead. Finally, I got it together enough to go down and get some coal and make a fire. It had just got going when simultaneously two things happened. Davy plugged in the vacuum cleaner, which blew all the fuses, and the wind veered around and smoke poured into the room. We staggered about in the gloom, treading on coffee cups, carrying pots of water to put out the fire. At that very moment came a cheery tattoo on the door knocker. Davy and I looked at each other, and the smoke, with mad red eyes and unspoken agreement, did not move. The knock came again. We did not stir. Whoever it was, we never found out, gave up. Heels went away. Probably it was Jesus. That's good.
That's beautiful.
Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Do you have any others?
No.
Or any thought on that?
I was going to mention that earlier when we were talking about hospitality.
Nice. Yeah. Here's another one on page 118 where he just says, we, Davy and I, for one thing... sorry, that was really bad. We, Davy and I, for one thing, take all who came to the studio. Whoever came, whatever the hour, was always welcome. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea that we were discussing earlier, where people just came and went. Mm-hmm. And they were always welcome, except that one time that they weren't.
When it was Jesus.
When it was Jesus, probably. On page 130, he says, this is just really nice. At home, morning and night, we had family prayers from the prayer book. The two of us kneeling at a wooden cross, reading and praying the well-loved prayers and holding hands. Aw. It's just so great.
Yeah. They also had a shared journal that they would both put their thoughts in,
yes.
Which I thought was a really cool idea.
They even relieved arguments from this journal.
By writing.
Where they would write out their thoughts on...
Very thoughtful.
So, really interesting stuff there. And a lot of the book is spent with just the two of them reading, too, which is great. Especially in the beginning when they first started dating, they felt like they needed to share everything they had read before, and they just read and read and read, consumed each other's
Well, they did that with books,
material.
But they also did it with music.
Yeah.
Anything else that they had not in common, they wanted to have together.
They wanted to have it, yeah. On page 141, he says, there may be danger in the love of beauty, though it seems treason to say it. Perhaps it can be a snare. If so, Jane and I were snared. Jane, we won't dive into that. But the point is, he was snared by beauty, and beauty can be a snare to us as well. There's definitely a danger there. And I think you and I have felt that too, where we begin to, idolize beauty over truth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also something he says on page 26 about
Excuse me.
How when he and Davy first met, one of the first things that drew him to her was that she said something about how beauty hurts.
Yeah, the pain of beauty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where is it? So they've been talking. They're already kind of smitten. He says, a girl who liked the sea and owls and dogs and poetry. Good heavens, a girl of girls. Then she said something about how beauty hurts. What? You too? I exclaimed in effect. You know that? The Pain of Beauty? I thought I was the only one. Which is funny because I know about The Pain of Beauty too.
Yeah. There is definitely one there. Yeah. What a great little book. I think I have one more quote here on page, unless I already read. I already read that
one.
Well then, wait, did I get 141?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I did. All right. Well, that was pretty much all I have, I think, unless you have anything to add to that.
I'm amazed we haven't mentioned Grey Goose at all. But,
Let's mention Grey Goose, shall we? Go ahead.
Well, there's this very important thing to them. In their quest for beauty and for unpressured time, they decide they want a yacht to live on. So they spend several years just searching for the perfect boat in which to share their adventures. And it's just a very sweet season of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a dream yacht that they wanted, that they weren't able to get.
Mm-hmm.
So they settled for the Grey Goose. And they really enjoyed it. They lived on the Grey Goose for quite some time, and they even were able to provide for themselves by writing articles for like boating magazines, which is insane. But they lived on the boat for about a year, right?
I think so, yeah.
A good portion of their time together was spent on that boat, the Grey Goose. But it was also a really large time for growth, I think, for both of them. And even prepared, I think, Davy for death later. But, yeah, there's just lots of... I mean, as we mentioned at the beginning of the review, this is not an attempt to cover all of the material of this book. There's so much here.
It's a small book, but it's dense.
It is so dense. Yeah, so anyway, I think that pretty much is all that we have for this review.
Mm-hmm.
We thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, thank you. And hopefully this review has inspired you to pick up a copy of this book and read it for yourself, to be inspired for yourself, to feel the pain and emotion of beauty that is in this book. But anyway, that's all we have for you. So, Lord willing, I will see you again very soon.
I won't.
She may not. But God bless, and we'll see you later.